And we're live. How's it going, everybody? It's Wardy here, reporting from Duffy's at Port St. Lucie in what has been nothing short of a fantastic trip that started on March 8th yesterday, in which I saw the Mets win their first game there in Jupiter against the Marlins by a final score of 7-3 that we recapped last night, that we're going to further break down, as well as today's 7-6 victory as well in their Port St. Lucie game that we saw against the Nats. A lot to break down here, folks, both positives and negatives. The positives has a lot to do with Clay Holmes looking like a true starter in this rotation to begin the 2025 regular season. But there's some negatives, headlined by Francisco Alvarez's gut-wrenching injury that's going to have him sidelined for the next 2 months, more than likely, at minimum. In tonight's show, we're going to break down all the latest in Mets land and this live edition from Port St. Lucie Mets Spring Training Big Mets Update segment, as I'll be accompanied shortly from Mike from Stark Raving Sports. For those that don't know Mike is a diehard Mets fan, has one of the best 2024 Mets season documentaries currently out on YouTube for you guys to check out. And we got my man Jim from Ballcap Sports, who's one of the best MLB-wide content creators in the game, to share his thoughts on Alvarez and a whole lot more. But let's get a quick roll call going here in the live show, and then we're going to break everything down. Shout out to our awesome friends here at Duffy's Sports Bar, guys. If you are in the Port St. Lucie area and you haven't been to Duffy's, I don't know what you're wasting your time for. Make sure you guys get here. Some great drinks, great wings, great food, and an awesome bowling alley connected to the main location that we're at right now in Port St. Lucie. We're going to be bowling with some awesome Mets fan subscribers after this live show is done that I cannot wait to get into. So shout out Duffy's. They give us a bunch of little baseballs as well as some little souvenirs. I love everything about it. Shout out to them. Let's get the roll call going here, folks. We got my guy Swaggin' Burger. We got Broken Jester. Sky, how you doing? Daniel Fleming, how are you? Thank you so much for chiming in. You're there. I'm in NC. Love to see it. We got Broken Jester. Mike Norden, great follower. We got Hyper in the chat with a $2 donation. Ray said, I'm going to be working at Citi Field this year. Let's get the hype going, Mario. That's awesome. Congratulations to you. Speaking of people who work at Mets facilities, I actually ran into someone who I know on X as, you know, a Mets fan, a woman who just started working at Port St. Lucie Clover Park this year. So it was really cool to interact with her. I'll see her at the game tomorrow. But congratulations on working at Citi Field. That's awesome. Let's get the hype in the chat for my man regarding that. We got Edwin in here. How you doing? We got my man Yoshima, our amazing member of 49 months, which states the following: I would let Juan Soto have my children. I mean, after Juan's game last night, I kind of found myself in the same category. All jokes aside, Max, how you doing? Let's see, Scott, No Name, Ray Neal, Mr. Chicken, Steve, my awesome friend, great member. We're of course going to get some wings. Absolutely, they're going to give us some wings mid-show here, I think, which is really cool. Sanders, No Name, Josh, thank you guys. Come one, come all. We appreciate you. If you guys could let me know and do a big favor by just letting us know how are the audio levels in this. I know it's not the best. These aren't the most expensive mics we're working with. We're just working with what we got right now. I know the audio is picking up around me a little bit, so apologies in advance. YouTube, don't flag me, okay? This is not a music highlight video. This is to break down the New York Mets 2025 spring training over this multi-day trip. Yoshima with the $5 holla, thank you so much for that. Yoshima says, hopefully I can make my way down to PSL for a future spring training in the future. I'm super jealous. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I'm grateful to be doing this for a third consecutive year. This is a yearly routine we're trying to make happen with myself and fellow creators in the space. And yeah, would love to see you down here. Hopefully it can happen as soon as next year, Yoshima. Audio's good. That is great to see. All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's first start with a quick recap on what's transpired over the past 24 hours in Mets land. From there, we will bring in my guy Mike. We'll talk a bit more, especially on guys like Clay Holmes, as well as Francisco Alvarez, and what are the Mets going to do at the catching position? Because let's be honest, folks, when you look at the current configuration, are we going to really try to fool ourselves? We're all delusional as Mets fans, but let's grasp the reality, which is we need to add another catcher. The same way we probably need to add another starter. The same way we probably need to add another reliever in certain arguments. Regardless, we're going to get into what those catchers could be that the Mets could find themselves seeking, and why David Stearns is probably far from done making moves from now up until the start of the 2025 regular season. But let's get into it from yesterday's victory, as I broke down in a video earlier, late last night actually, that many of you guys checked out already. Thank you so much for that. The Mets won 7-3 in their matchup against the Miami Marlins, and guys, I've seen Juan Soto in person on the Padres in San Diego. I've seen him in person there in DC as a National. I've seen him as a Yankee. nothing even comes close to seeing him in a Mets uniform. Obviously, bias comes into play, but how can it not? Juan Soto's first at-bat, first pitch swinging, and it's a clear opposite field double that drives in some runs, which you love to see. He was scorching liners, ropes left, right, and center in his 3-for-3 game yesterday. And Juan Soto is a $805 million man for a reason, and it's really cool. It's very fascinating to see someone land with a new team, be as acclimated as he was right away, but most importantly, look how effortless his at-bats are. The guy is clearly on a superior level from the average player. He's in his own realm right now. And the reason why he's got that big bag is exactly like what we saw in spring training in these at-bats. He is as quality as they come. He's calm, composed, and collected. And like what he did against the Nationals a week or so ago, he'll spit off, a changeup that, he initially turned on in, and he's like, okay, I know what you're going to give me, buddy. And then he's going to go oppo for a tank right after, north of 400 feet. Why? Because he's Juan mother effing Soto. That's why. So to see Soto in person was nothing short of a tremendous treat. As some of you guys saw from the clips yesterday that I posted on our video, Soto looked tremendous, and outside of him, there were some other key standouts on the offensive end, including guys like Brett Beatty, who ultimately was able to drive in a couple runs thanks to playing the ball in play. We saw guys like both Jared Young and Donovan Walton get in on the hit parade yesterday as well. Donovan Walton, as we know, is competing with Brett Beatty for that final utility spot. No, I selfishly don't want Donovan Walton in that utility spot. The same thing goes to Zach Short, Nick Madrigal, Joey Wendell. Step on down. What do all these, I don't want to call them all schmucks, but what do they have in common? These are all veteran, more fringe minor league players than anything else that are going to be nothing more than probably taking up space on the Mets roster to begin the year. And then, wow, color me shocked, they're DFA'd within the first week or two, or within the first couple at least, like what we saw with guys like Zach Short, like Joey Wendell, etc. Why give leashes to guys when you can at least have upside, flexibility in someone like Brett Beatty? And Beatty has been very poised and really determined this spring training, which we've witnessed with his quality at bats, his strong defense at both second, short, and third base. We saw how Acuña's look great as well. But to see a guy in Jared Young who did have an RBI yesterday, but then was out after running the bases as Donovan Walton was hitting a double. Young was sent down as there were another round of cuts that we saw for Mets spring training today, and there really isn't anyone of note in that. Just a couple guys to bear in mind right now: Rico Garcia, Yaxel Urios, and that being in Justin Hageman. What do these three arms have in common? These are all arms that are more than likely going to be impacting the Mets at some point this season, especially when we look at someone like Rico Garcia, posted a sub-4 ERA in the minor leagues we saw last year, but has a lively fastball. The Mets are really bullish on his arsenal, and there are a lot of people in the more advanced pitching community, like my man Isaac Rothman, that I had the pleasure of chopping up with at today's Mets game. You guys know Isaac very well. He's been doing great things here on the platform as a pitching contributor the past year. He's very high on a guy like Rico Garcia. You guys should be too. But even with them not starting here in the bullpen, doesn't mean that they won't positively impact them. Why? Because this is the David Stearns MO. This is the David Stearns way. He's going to bring in an abundance of arms, and we're going to see them throughout the course of the year churn out into hopefully something special. And what I think is one of the deeper bullpens, I'm going to say it right now, I think the Mets have one of the deeper bullpens in all of the National League. I think they have so much depth. A lot of guys are crafty. A lot of guys are more pronator pitchers, especially when you look at the sinker-slider mixes in their game. So when you look at sinkers, sliders, splitties, sweepers, you think of David Stearns, you think of Jeremy Hefner, you think of Carlos Mendoza, and you think of this New York Metropolitan pitching staff. So the Mets took 7-3 in their game one yesterday that we saw with David Pearson giving the Mets a solid 4 innings of work, and he looked great. Pearson has been as advertised. He has now given the Mets 7 scoreless innings so far this spring training. My question for each and every one of you guys is, what are your expectations for David Pearson here in 2025? Do you think he's going to truly find himself as a 30-plus game starter and hopefully give the Mets anywhere from a 2.5 to a 3.5 ERA? That would be amazing. The expected numbers are never in his favor. He's not an analytics darling by any stretch. He's the opposite. But Pearson continues to churn out quality outings for this Mets team, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. The same way the Mets didn't stop scoring 7 runs, right? Because as we got into game 2, which was technically today, they won by a final score of 7-6. And little did you know probably that the game was 6-0 to begin this one, just for my guy Genesis Cabrera. I've been preaching him to you guys. You guys know how much I want Genesis Cabrera to crack this bullpen over the other soft tossing southpaw, Danny Young. I think Cabrera has more upside as a low and high leverage option, more low leverage as a lefty to back up a guy like AJ Minter, where AJ can really handle the high leverage stuff as a quality lefty option. Well, Genesis Cabrera was sadly batting practice today, gave up, I believe, 5 earned runs or so. Not ideal, not what you want to see. But something that Jesus Cabrera and Jake Irvin, the starting pitcher for the Nationals, had in common today is that they were both batting practice. Jake Irvin was giving up hits left, right, and center that we saw, and as soon as this game started from the Mets, where Clay Holmes is towing the rubber and Jake Irvin's on the other side, it's quickly a 2-0 Mets lead thanks to Swaggy V and Mark Vientos ripping a nice tank that we saw, and then afterwards the Mets continued to pour it on, and they poured it on so much that not only guys like Vientos got involved, but potentially the Mets' new backup catcher, and I say that with a huge asterisk because how many of you guys knew Jackson Reetz a year ago? Probably not too many of you. Well, he hit a no-doubt grand salami on what felt like a line drive grand salami that I saw in person right there front and center, and I said, oh my goodness gracious, Francisco Alvarez, who? Cue the jokes, I know. But all right, so the Mets won 7-6 in this one after a bullpen implosion by Jesus Cabrera. The key takeaways on the offensive end were headlined by the guys that we just talked about, including Jackson Reetz, that we're going to talk about more in a second, everybody. But when we looked at the key takeaways, there's one thing that was most notable, and that was Clay Holmes' continued dominance. I think we can all agree there. And thank you guys so much for first chiming in live on a replay as we're live from Duffy Sports Bar here in Port St. Lucie as we're breaking down the latest Big Mets updates here live from Mets spring training. And no better man to come join me in this conversation now is a diehard Mets fan and one of the bigger baseball creators in the game today, my man Mike from Stark Raving Sports. Mike, how you doing, baby?
I'm well. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, I think they can hear you fine. Why don't you clip that bad boy on and let's get this panel going. So, as many of you guys know, Mike, who has a YouTube channel pushing north of 200,000 subscribers already, he needs to share some of them. I don't know about you. But Mike has been doing a great job with not only baseball-related content, but sports-related content. But there's one thing that Mike absolutely nailed, not only him, Matt, I had a little feature in it, Giraffe Neck Mark had a feature in it, and many others, and that was like an hour-plus long documentary or so on the 2024 OMG Mets season. Guys, I know SNY came out with a doc and it was very good, but if you want from a true fan feel, from really the creator side of things, nothing better than checking out the documentary he has on Stark Raving Sports' YouTube channel. Now, Mike joins me here. Now, Mike, let's talk about Clay Holmes, because when we got there, we were like, oh, already first inning, a pair of strikeouts, and that's it. Three up, or looking very sharp outside of the 4-pitch walk early. The walks were the only bugaboo that we saw with Clay Holmes today as he walked 3 over 3.2 innings. But when you give up just one double towards the end, 8 punchies on a 50% whiff rate, you have the sink piece, you got the 4-seam to a lesser degree, you have that new kick change in the arsenal, you got the sweeper. What do you have to say about Clay Holmes and his adjustment now into becoming a true starter for this Mets team?
Oh, it's been great. And everything you could have wanted so far, you've gotten. You would have expected more bumps in the road, slowing down in games. Not getting any of that so far. He's been kind of sticking the landing through spring training. You just hope he keeps, sticking the landing for the season. But it's definitely been a lot better than I guess most of you watching who are like, why are we having the Yankees closer stretch out and be a starter?
Right.
He's been proving a lot of us wrong, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I want to give a huge shout out to our mutual friend James Shiano from the Mets Up podcast, because James came out with a tweet earlier today, which was fascinating. And he said, you see how Clay Holmes threw 65 pitches today? That's the first time Clay Holmes has thrown 65 pitches since 2018. Last time he stretched out as a starter. So Holmes, what do we know? A, he's been with the Mets in spring training a month before pretty much anyone else because he wanted to get ramped up early to start the year. B, he added that kick change to his arsenal, which, according to Isaac Groffman, our pitching contributor on the platform, still believes he's working on getting more depth there because it hasn't been exactly the way that he's liked. It's gotten swing and miss, but there can still be more deception with that pitch that he's utilizing with, again, I don't know if it's your pointer finger or your middle. I always throw this off, but one of those fingers he uses for the kick change, the difference between just holding the baseball normally is he raises one of these fingers just up, just raises like that a little bit. So then when he's releasing, it causes a lot more depth when he's throwing that kick change, as you like to call it. So Holmes has looked great so far this spring. And I think my biggest takeaway has been how comfortable and how poised he looks like a true starter. There's nothing about his makeup that strikes me as, oh, this guy clearly was a reliever last year. The Mets are obviously stretching him out. He, outside of the walks, which obviously are going to be a fluctuating theme with Clay. Don't worry, Yankees fans. We've seen enough Clay Holmes reliever highlights. We know sometimes he can either be batting practice or walking everyone their mother. That's okay. We have Edwin Diaz. We've been through these things before, right? Now as a starter, I think Holmes is not only going to benefit greatly by going from a 2-3 pitch mix to now north of a 5 pitch mix, but now to have the infield that he has behind him with Lindor up the middle, but also a guy that profiles so well with what this Mets pitching lab is. Let's take a step back for a second, right? We saw Holmes perform really well today, but one of the reasons as to how he's performing so well is because of the Mets hires and Eric Yeagers, Jeremy Hefner, and in my opinion, who cannot be slept on, in Desi Drewskull. Desi Drewskull, never forget Desi, guys. The Mets got him from the Yankees. They stole him from the Yanks after the World Series run. He was like, I don't want to be here anymore. He comes to the Mets on a lateral move in the same assistant pitching coach role, and Clay has spoken glowingly that we've seen of Desi in his interviews with the Mets official podcast over the past couple weeks, among others. So when we talk a little bit more on Clay Holmes here, one, what is your expectations for him this season? And two, what is something that you are most expecting from him in year one as a starter, both as a pro and as a con?
Okay, so the expectations are probably growing every day. To be honest with you, the fact that he's, going out and doing it, having length get built up, the fact that he was here early, making it happen, and the stuff is playing very well. I think that now the expectation is generally that when he's out there, he's going to be pretty good. I guess the con, though, is you realistically can't expect a ton of innings, a ton of workload. Could slow down a little bit at the end. But I think that for, at least when we break the season, they might have a pretty good guy on their hands here that you would never have, you probably, when you first saw the news that you were having Clay Holmes as a starter, you probably would never have expected he'd hit the ground running this quickly in camp. It's just now going to be about, is he hitting the ground running and sticking it through September?
Yeah, I think this has a lot to say not only on how confident David Stearns and the Mets' entire coaching staff is right now and their advancements that they made the past couple of years, right? Because, David talked about why has there been an increased trend of recent in relievers turned starters, like Michael Cain, a former teammate of Clay Holmes that's now dominating with the Padres. And when David was asked that, he replied by saying, it's a mix of things, but it does have a lot to do, and it has a lot in hand with the confidence level of what's going on right now in the Mets hires over the past 4+ years. Since bringing Steve Cohen in and the entire makeup of their analytics group and their pitching staff and their, when I say staff, I mean their coaching staff, it's night and day from what it previously was. The Mets not only feel confident about how they shape up with other teams, but they feel like they have one of the better groups of collective coaches in all of not only the National League, but Major League Baseball on the pitching end. So that's why this is really a test to them to see how much the information, the advanced information that they're constantly utilizing every week with Clay will benefit, as well as showcasing a guy of his makeup was always destined to be a starter. He was initially that with the Pittsburgh Pirates. We know he's dominated in a lesser role and I should say increased role with the Yankees. First as a closer, lost a closer spot over the past year to Luke Weaver, but still, again, a solid reliever to have. Holmes has always had the makeup as a guy that's been stretched out to give you north of 100 innings. So I have lofty expectations from this year. I feel like I have to, especially with the current configuration of this Mets rotation. You can't look at Clay Holmes, who currently sits as basically your number 2 or number 3 right now, and not have at least hope you have a level of confidence, because you need him to carry you. You got to get at least hopefully 120 to 150 innings from him this year would be very ideal. And you also, I think when it comes to pros and cons, Mike, for me at least, the biggest pro I see with someone like him, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a Mets fan, I think it's a reality. I truly believe Clay Holmes has the makeup and his sample size to be one of the better starters in all of the National League this year. I'm not saying he's going to be the lengths of being in Cy Young contention, but I do think he's going to be in a similar category like what we've seen in the Seth Lugos, the Michael Cains of the world, and putting that match together, he kind of will find himself in the Cy Young category inevitably, right? And then you get into the cons. The cons is Clay Holmes, God forbid, deals with an ailment from being stretched out more as a starter, and that's something that you really can't predict. It also could be something along the lines of inconsistency. He just is not really getting acclimated maybe within the first couple months, and that hits the Mets 10 times harder, just like last year with a lot of their woes, because everything's going wrong at the same time. You think of last year with the injuries to start the year for the Mets with Kodai Senga, among others, and then their underwhelming start offensively, it was all doom and gloom. This year, Shamanai is down. Frankie Montas is down. Francisco Eltro effing Alvarez is down, that we're going to get into very shortly, among others. That's not ideal whatsoever, but if we can at least have Clay Holmes be the guy that we expect him to be, I think the Mets are going to be in good hands. So I don't know if you said this already, Mike, but can you relay what is your biggest pro and your biggest con you think you have for Clay Holmes in the course of the 162?
I think the pro is that the stuff is playing and that there hasn't been a hiccup in the beginning. The con is you don't know if that's going to be there at the end of the season, that the mileage could rack up. But like, for the first half of the season, All-Star's probably in play as a possibility because of how good he's looked. Like, assuming you guys have watched the games, you're here, you've watched Clay Holmes throw as a Met. He's looked really good.
I'm more intrigued with Clay Holmes than I am with anyone else in this staff. And I say that as someone who also zoomed and watched Kodai Senga give up a tank to Drew Gilbert and have some quality at-bats in the backfields that we saw today. You saw how SNY clips how Kodai Senga dominated minor leaguers today. He did, except for the tanks he was giving up.
One pitch that you filmed.
It was hilarious. Perfect timing. We pan, we zoom all the way in. Backfields is so far away from where we were in the outfield of Clover Park there. And you zoom in, and I'm like, is that Drew Gilbert? I'm like fairly confident that it's him, Clifford, or Morabito based on the batting stances. And then with second pitch, bam, it's out of here. They're all looking back. I'm like, okay, he's giving up meatballs. But either way, Kodai is looking good. He's ramping up, and that's great. To have him, Clay, and David at least to start to carry you with your three, I can live with that to start of the year. That second half of the rotation, massive question mark that the spring training is going to help find some answers to with the Griffin Cannings, the Tyler McGills, who will be starting this Tuesday. Shout out to the McGill family. Hope to see you guys there. Same thing with not only Griffin Canning, but Paul Blackburn. He's been the most underwhelming pitcher so far this spring. Is he going to be able to get back to being a solid number 5 or number 6 starter for this Mets team, especially when they desperately need it right now? That's a great question, and hopefully he continues to ramp up. He's healthy, so Mendoza and him aren't worried about their recent performance, but rather just making sure he stays healthy and on track, working with his pitches, and we should bear that in mind. It's spring training, so they're working on their arsenals, among other things. But, you know, when we talk about spring training, it's impossible not to continue to gas up Juan Soto while we're here in person, and there's no better man to talk about Juan Soto with than not only you, Mike, but with a man who appreciates all the greats in the game, and that's Jim from Ballcap Sports. Jim, how you doing, my man?
I'm good. Nice. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. So we got the three-headed monster here. So let's see. Gerrit Cole news. According to source, Gerrit Cole has been recommended to have Tommy John surgery, but they are now waiting for a second opinion to confirm the diagnosis. So Jim Bowden just put 2 and 2 together. It's called common sense. What do you think they're doing after seeking second and third opinions?
Well, he got that
the past 48 hours.
He got that yesterday, right, or 2 days ago, and that is what he went to seek the second opinion. This is 2 off seasons in a row where Gerrit Cole got derailed.
No, but
this will be it though. Yeah, this is the year, and it's not only this year, but it's the year after.
Can I take a minute to say that 200 wins might not be doable ever again now? Because Cole was the last guy standing who could have had 200 wins in their career.
Right. With how much starters have changed now, and everyone's more of like a 5 or 6 inning guy. Yeah.
That might be like sorry to have the doom and gloom, but that's what I hear is that we may have seen the last of 200 wins, let alone 300.
Well, if you're the Yankees, that Max Fried signing is even more important.
And how about that you didn't trade Stroman? Like Stroman is still sticking around.
No, they almost traded him. Now he's
Marcus Stroman has quickly become the Tyler McGill of the Yankees.
He's like a
just when you thought he was out, you reel him back in. That's exactly what happened. Wow. He's going to be their number 5 starter, if not their number 4 starter, to begin the year.
Yeah,
remember when Max Manus tweeted on X like 2 weeks ago that Clay Holmes was the Mets' number 3 starter? You know who you are, Max. All right, let's get into it.
Wow.
Jim.
Juan Soto.
Jim, let's talk about Juan Soto. I know how much you love talking about players not on the Blue Jays. So let's get into this and let's break down Juan Soto. What was your initial impressions? Because I know you've seen him in person during his time in DC, obviously, and maybe even a little bit with San Diego. But to see him kind of do what he did yesterday, even in spring training, just as nonchalant as he does it, what do you have to say about that?
It makes everything look so easy, and there are. I mean, that's certainly easy to say. You could say that about a lot of the greats, but it's just a different level with Juan Soto, and it changes.
Thank you very much.
It feels like Thank you. The wings just got here. It feels like
Thank you, Duffy's.
Shout out to Duffy's.
Everything changed.
Thank you so much.
With the Mets, with the signing of Juan Soto, and now he's just showing you what you got, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the effortless for me. That's the first thing. Like, I've never seen someone look as comfortable. And he's like, you know how some players you can clearly tell are just grinding every single time,
right?
And then there's others where it's like they're clearly playing a kid's sport.
Right.
Juan Soto feels like the prime example of someone who's playing a child's game, while there's a lot of children still involved. That's how it really gives off. Attacking.
He was in ambush mode, and Max Meyer, like outside of Juan Soto's at bats, had a good outing, and there's a lot of good.
With 3 well-struck balls,
like all smoked.
Yes,
literally all
destroyed.
Smoked. Like the first an opposite field double, and then he ropes like back-to-back hits as well.
Yeah.
After that, no, he's insane.
Is it too much to say that he's like saving our lives right now? That he's like the greatest thing that ever happened.
For Mets fans, this is as close to like saving our lives as we're going to get in recent memory. And that's actually a fair question for you, Jim. Just not to get on a tangent, but for the Blue Jays, what would be like the equivalent of a trade or a signing that would have saved your life?
Just re-sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
The bar's low.
That's all I need.
Low.
Just don't let Vladdy leave, because that just signals that the franchise is headed in a bad direction. That's all I need. That's it, and I'll be happy with that.
So we were just talking about Clay Holmes for a bit, and I know you have really been getting more involved on the pitching side of things. You were guys, you need to understand, Jim was breaking down step by step, pitch by pitch, everything about the mechanics of Clay Holmes. And did you get a chance to ask Isaac about that?
Did not.
Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow might be the day, because we'll see Isaac again at the game. So, in your opinion, what about Clay Holmes was the most notable from his spring outing today that you saw? And secondly, how do you see this Mets rotation shaping up throughout the course of the 162 as currently constructed, with 1 Senga, 2 Peterson, 3 Holmes, 4 McGill, 5 Canning, 6 Blackburn? Let's just say that's the order, even if that's not the order in the end.
Well, if Clay Holmes is going to pitch like he did today, David Stearns does it again, right? He did it last offseason with Minaya and Severino, and he could be looking at it again this offseason. And if this works out, does it give you more confidence in his signing of Frankie Montas? If the Clay Holmes thing is looking like it's working out this well, maybe, again, extend the credit that he has earned. But I like the one thing that you're talking about me breaking down the delivery. We had a great angle of it, and the only thing that I noticed with him is that there is something he does with his glove in his hand and his delivery when he's turning, and there's a little bit of repeating the delivery that would be great if he could just hit that every single time. And I think that is what could lead to some walks and will lead to some outings that will be undesirable. But at the same time, he's good enough where he's going to do what he did today at the same time. So it gives you great confidence and faith in what he can do and what he's off to on the spring training. That, again, Stearns did it again.
He's a lot more observant than we are. I would have never figured this out.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Jim has a great reason why he's been observant. Jim, explain why.
I've been going through. My son is learning the craft of pitching from a guy who's a local high school coach in the Maryland area, and his son pitched in the Mets minor league system. Some may remember the last name Selmer. That was a kid that was drafted by the Mets and pitched in the system. And he's teaching my son how to pitch, and I'm learning all sorts of new pitching techniques and mechanics when it comes to delivery and follow through and glove placement and head placement and everything. That the little nuances that they're new to me, and I love that I've learned it.
That reminds me of just when I first met Isaac, who you got a chance to meet over the past day or so, and how much he's made me learn more on the aspects of pitching, not only from the mechanical side of things, but the reasons as to why a pitcher had struggles because of this specific pitch, and that's why he lost his command, or because, again, the slight differences maybe in his arm slot, you can see that, he's having the same amount of success. It's fascinating to see how much little differences can make a drastic impact on a pitcher and their development. And we saw some pitchers that came in over the last couple of games we've seen, and I'm like, I have a feeling this guy's going to be wild. And it wasn't for the Mets, it was for other Grissom, who came in today to relieve Irvin.
I'm sorry, like he's going to be a wild pitcher if he keeps dropping his glove like he drops and his head is not still.
Right.
You have to have those things if you want to repeat your delivery, because your balance gets off, your weight distribution gets off, and it's hard to repeat your delivery.
Yeah, no, it is hard. But I will say, I think there's a lot of reasons for Mets fans to not only be optimistic about Clay Holmes specifically, but again, this really feels like a story that we should all buy into. Don't let Yankees fans make you think that, oh, this guy's a bum or anything like that. There literally is no way to properly compare, because he's so polar opposite in his utilization with the Mets than what he has been in previous years. If this was, okay, he was just a starter with the Yankees and he was getting shelled, second turn in the order, then that's a different discussion. Then we'll have that. But that's not the case here. What is the case, though, fellas, is the fact that we're going to hit some more spring training games, but now we're going to be hitting some spring training games without Francisco Alvarez.
Yeah.
And that really bums me out. You know, when I rolled out of bed today, we all woke up insanely late. We were watching the UFC 313 last night, then the clocks changed, and then before I knew it, I wasn't going to bed till like 4:30 a.m., and then when I rolled out, I kid you not, rolled out of bed. You know when you first roll out of bed and you're not there, you're not coherently there, but you're somewhat there. I waltzed my way into the shower, and right as I turned on the shower and I just glanced to see the notification on my phone, breaking news, Francisco Alvarez out 6 to 8 weeks with a broken hamate bone in his left hand, his catching hand. Let's start with you, Mike. What was the initial reaction as this transpired? And secondly, how do you feel about this now heading into the season without El Troll to begin 2025?
The initial reaction was I yelled a word that you can't say on TV very loudly.
Okay, you can technically say it here, and it starts with an F, but I'll let you guys put
I got more respect for the Duffy's establishment than that. Recreate it. Thinking about it now, like, Alvarez was kind of the guy you needed to go to extend the depth of the lineup. Like, if we're going to play the game that we have a really good 1 through 4, 1 through 5 on this team, you kind of need, Alvarez is the key to 6 to 9 kicking it up as well. Now that being gone, kind of does put a little bit of a small wrench into the expectations for the rest of the lineup. I think you just have to hope Luis Torrens, if you're going to roll with him, provides you any value. He did last year. He did kind of step up in some very dark times and provide the Mets a good amount of help. Can lightning strike twice? We have no idea. I think they probably will look into some outside help, maybe a Christian Vasquez, Christian Betancourt, Tomas Nido.
Oh, Mike, you're killing me, Mike. I was going to have it panned a certain way, but all right, let's do it now then. Okay, because we were all debating earlier today who could be the best fill-in for Francisco Alvarez being out. And I know Jackson Reetz hit a grand slam today. I also know that I didn't know who the hell Jackson Reetz was a week ago, right? Like I'm only somewhat exaggerating as I say that. I know he's been in the organization, but he's not a guy that we should at all expect to begin the year on the team. If he does start the year on the team, I think that's a greater flaw, and that's where the stubbornness at times, and I love David Stearns, but there is a stubbornness that comes in hand with how much we feel that we can handle things internally versus going the lengths to seek external help. And there's nothing out there externally via trade or the free agent market that's going to cost them an arm and a leg to be like, oh, the 110% tax has to be the factor. That can't be the factor in a situation like this when you are now without your true leader, your game caller, your guy in that rotation that everyone has the largest comfortability with. Not that Luis Torrens is bad, because he's very much a formidable backup, but we also struck lightning in a bottle with a guy that's been a pretty much career minor leaguer last year, so why should we expect that to automatically continue? There's a great reality where Torrens and increased playing time can not only regress, but just be more of like, again, just more of your defensive catcher than anything else that could throw out guys without second and maybe poke one oppo every now and then and let that be that. So there's a couple guys that I have in mind, and one right away that I've been beating the drum on is Tomas Nido. What is the guy that makes most sense for you, Mike?
Christian Vasquez, I think, comes to mind.
Jim?
Well, I wanted to do this because I kind of am sort of interested in Yan Gomes because he's available. But here's the thing. I think the problem with
is Yan Gomes more intriguing to you than Yasmani Grandal?
Interesting.
Well, see, I want to play a name game with you guys.
Okay.
I wanted to play a name game because I guess first and foremost, I think if they wanted to just solve this internally, they could, because it's only we got 6 to 8 weeks.
It's a month to a month and a half of without Alvarez, and that's a lot.
It is
that
like,
right there.
It's a lot of time.
Exactly. That's 30 to 45 games.
But it's not the season.
I think more.
If he was out for the season, I think they would be aggressive right now. But David Stearns feels like a guy who, when something happens, pauses, takes a beat, I don't see knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
So when you look at the landscape, I've saw it in the chats. Like it's the perfect answer isn't out there.
I think they'll call somebody that's outside the org.
Yeah, but I don't think.
But
they
what
need
about
a perfect
Nido?
answer.
I
mean,
feel
he's
like
still outside the org.
Nido would be a trade, but he knows the pitching staff.
Exactly. You're taking the words out of my mouth.
That's the problem. Because like Yasmani Grandal, Youngos, Bethancourt, Vasquez, there's a handful of guys, but they don't know this pitching staff.
You just need somebody who won't be a disaster.
Yeah.
Like the benefit of having Juan Soto in the lineup is that the amount of oomph and depth at the same time just kind of got lengthened. You just need the 9-hole catcher to not be like a complete gaping black hole.
Right.
And then you may survive just off that alone, having Soto in the lineup, but
I think every option is a gaping black hole when it comes to the bat.
I guess you just have to like cross your fingers and pray that you get like league average catcher
Get a hot week.
production.
Get a hot week or two from whoever you go to.
So, Tomas Nido almost feels like it needs to happen, which is why it's not going to happen at that rate. Have you seen the trend, everybody, when it comes to like former Mets, especially that? Oh, he makes so much sense, especially now that there's an injury, and they don't do it. So maybe I shouldn't beat this drum much. I'll be quick with Tomas Nido then. Nido's currently with the Detroit Tigers. He's having a great start to spring training. He's currently boxed out on being on that Tigers roster. So what does that mean if that happens? 100K trade to the Mets is what it should be, is what I'm thinking. It needs to be a trade, make that happen, bring Nido back, because I understand this pitching staff is not the exact same as it was when he left, but there is no one out there that has the familiarity that he has, that can still throw out some guys. At times Nido, obviously at second, every now and then. And let's be frank, we just need someone who will be comfortable back there. We're not asking for someone to fill the shoes of Alvarez's loss offensively if he goes back to being that 25 to 30 home run guy. We're not looking for that. We just need a guy that's going to be able to command this pitching staff and make sure that they don't go completely erratic for the first month and a half where we're like, you got to be kidding me. How do we just go 2 games below 500 the first month of April because 5 games were costed by, say, having boneheaded catchers? You know, or just not having the right game calling, or maybe the defense isn't there. Nido helps that, and there aren't many other guys out there that I think fit the mold the way that Nido does. Miss me with the nonsense on James McCann. Anyone even bringing him up has no clue what they're talking about. They're smoking that good stuff so good that clearly you can only find it in select locations. I've yet to find it. James McCann is never going to be a New York Met again, and if he is, I will not only eat my words, I'll do a dare like that. It's within reason for you guys, because
come up with a dare,
you guys can figure out the dare.
You gotta eat your hat. You gotta eat a hat.
James McCann makes so not sense. It doesn't even make sense what I'm saying right now because of how much the idea of him pisses me off. And it should piss you off. There's nothing about it that would ever make sense. James McCann is not even an MLB caliber catcher. Tomas Nido does laps around him every day of the week. Defensively, give me the soft dribbler of a single from Tomas Nido. Give me that 1 double a week off the wall. That's all I need. Then you look at the other options in the Christian Bethancourts and the Christian Vasquez's. Vasquez, Mike, that we were talking about earlier, he's fascinating in the sense that that's usually a bat-first mentality, a guy that usually hits for eye contact. For the past 2 years, he's been a collected WRC plus of 60. So 40% below the average batter in the past 2 years, which is why he's not on the team right now. Here's the thing about Vasquez and why he's intriguing. A defensive dynamo. He was still a plus WAR player the past couple years with the Twins, even with the bat falling off because how good he is defensively.
And there is need for a backup.
Exactly. If there's a guy out there that can fill this immediate void for that backup spot to hone in on the defense, and it ain't going to be Nido because maybe a trade doesn't happen, Christian Vasquez, who's still a free agent, who's still available out there in the free agent market, can make it happen.
And you can bring him in now. Like that's
You
the
can
other
bring
thing.
him in
Nido
right now.
Nido is at the end of spring if you don't figure it out. But you have a little bit of time now where you can bring Vasquez or Bethancourt or Grandal or Gomes. You can bring
really
somebody
just
in now.
If David Stearns is willing to roll into the season with Jackson Reetz or Chris Williams on the opening day.
I think it's so foolish if he does that. Chris Williams, who has power upside, for those that don't know, he's been a pretty solid home run hitter in the minor leagues the past couple of years. Very low contact hitter as well. I can't speak too much on his defensive game, but I think a good way to explain his defensive game is the fact that he has been pretty much platooning catching and DH this spring. I think that gives us an idea as to what he'd probably be, which is not much on the defensive upside. Terrence, we saw his upside. We saw his peak last year. So if he gives us anything similar to that at the beginning of the year, awesome. But it's hard to not envision a Luis Terrence kind of getting a little burnout back in this role like he was last year, even with a normal camp and everything, because this was just thrown at him. You know, like, I think he was riding off of the adrenaline last year, just got traded from the Bronx to the Mets, and they're throwing him games right away. He's a part of the London series. All these crazy things are happening.
The season.
And he did save our season. He was
in London?
Mike, he was a start of saving our season. That tremendous play, even with that schmuck Garrett Stubbs, you little piece of shit, bolting down the third baseline, right? And we saw him try to take out Terrence. Thankfully, still got the throw to first. You guys remember. I remember like it was yesterday back in May in 2024. Terrence is awesome, but I just don't have a level of faith and confidence that he will be that consistently. So any of those guys make sense. Christian Bethancourt, is he on a team right now? If he is, we should trade for him for $100K. That could be a backup option too. There are a couple else out there that maybe are more ideal for you, whether it's like the 40-year-old Yan Gomes or basically the 40-year-old Yasmani Grandal, all of which are not known for their offensive upside too much now, but just bringing a veteran game caller, I don't think would be a bad idea either. So now, rapid fire, don't think twice. Should the Mets add an external piece for that catching position, who's it going to be? Mike?
Yes.
Who?
Oh, I think you said should you.
No.
Christian Vasquez.
I think it'll end up being Nido. I think they'll end up being Nido because of his experience with the staff.
I'm going to go with Nido as long as the Tigers are willing to cut ties and like that's, you know, dead weight, not a problem.
He's an NRI, isn't he? Isn't he a non-roster invite?
Yes.
Maybe.
So
I think he is because he's not in line to crack the roster right now over their other catching options, if I'm not mistaken. Again, if Tomas Nido was a non-roster invite, there's a probably good reason he wasn't going to crack the team to begin with. But even with the solid spring, I think he's a perfect fit for this Mets team. So, as kind of getting to a closer conclusion here, and shout out to our awesome supporter, Dave Kaplitz in the live chat. Thank you so much for the donation earlier, Dave. Dave said about Alvarez, it's devastating. It is. It's devastating in the sense that it's another year where us Mets fans have to deal with the what if. Jim, Mike, you might wonder what I'm saying with that. The what if with Francisco Alvarez and this damn health. Another year where to begin the year, he's not right. And now there very well could be another season where he's tinkering throughout the course of the year and getting his game right in the first half and then having these ebbs and flows of ups and downs in the second half. It's one thing to be a player that goes through normal ebbs and flows in a 162. It's another that has had reoccurring broken hand issues. In the case of Alvarez, with his catching hand that we know, and now has to deal with that throughout the entire course again when he's back from injury. That's my biggest concern, and that's why I'm so devastated about this news, like what Dave Kaplitz stated, is because Alvarez is 23 years of age, right? He's entering his 4th season. The fact that people are calling him a bust pisses me off. Like, guys, Mike Piazza was basically 24 in his rookie year. Come on, stop it. And I don't even want to hear the nonsense on, it's because he isn't living up to expectations. I get that, they're lofty expectations, but he's also kind of an anomaly in recent Mets history for like a prospect catcher from Venezuela at 16-17 that you signed to a max bonus, and then bam, he's cracking your team already by time he's 20, 21 years of age, making a debut at least, because we're desperate and we got to call him up in Atlanta in 2022. You know, it's crazy. But Alvarez, a very important piece to the puzzle for this Mets team. We'll see what happens with his health and his development, but every fan has a reason to be bothered. Sadly, this is just another day in Mets land, especially begin spring training. But we're very happy to be here in Port St. Lucie. We cannot thank Duffy Sports Bar enough. Shout out to them. We're going to be eating up these wings in just a second, and then we're going to be bowling with some awesome Mets fans who went out of their way to attend and check in the live show and attendance here. So if you guys want to check out further content from us, please make sure you're watching on the WardyNYM platform. We will have more content for you guys tomorrow, either before and or after the Mets game. And then Jim.
Shameless plug. In about 3 minutes, there will be a premiere on my channel with the 3 of us as we did an NL preview. So if you want to check that out, you want more from Tyler, you want more from Mike, we have a premiere. It's about 30 minutes and it starts at 9 o'clock. 2 minutes.
A great question. I think people have their priorities straight in the chat. I see that someone said, what y'all drinking tonight? So we're rocking water right now because again, we're gonna have, you guys.
I'm double fisting Diet Pepsi and water. It's getting crazy.
The nights just getting started, if you couldn't tell. I will probably defer to just some very generic light beers like the young, soon-to-be 25-year-old that I am. Once I'm 40, once I'm Jim's age, even though I will say, Jim, you're not an IPA guy, are you?
I like them.
Oh, you like them? Okay.
I'll
When did
rock
you
with
start
it.
liking? What age do you start liking IPAs?
I don't have it. I don't have that pinpointed. I don't know.
Okay. Would you say it was during your 20s or no? Don't say it was during your 20s.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, again,
I was all
taste
about
buds
the
aren't there
Corona,
yet.
Corona and hard liquor at that point.
There you go. So that's exactly what we'll be doing. We're going to be bowling, having a lot of fun. But before we get out of here, I have some final remarks from both Jim and Mike to share. Starting with you, Mike. One, how has your experience been so far in Port St. Lucie? Year 3 of us doing this trip. Year 4 of us going out of our way to hang out. If you guys don't know, Mike and I first met in North Carolina back in 2021 for what was a Bros versus Pros baseball game. It was really cool. We faced basically like any ball teams, or like a lot of like, again, D1 like studs basically from like the Burlington sock puppets and the disco turkeys as well. And Mike and I got a chance to first meet them in person, and the rest is history. We've been doing these spring training trips every year. My brother partook with us a couple years ago as well. Robbie Hyde, who's not with us right now, will actually be hanging out with us tomorrow, which will be a lot of fun. Draft Mark's been a part of it in the past. He won the future among other creators. So if you guys have been enjoying this content, please make sure you continue to check it out. But Mike, for you, what are your biggest takeaways on this spring training trip and the Mets as we head into 2025?
Just that all this is a blessing. What a time to be doing this. What a time to be a Met fan. This is like maybe the time to get excited about the Mets until maybe 10 o'clock this morning when Alvarez got hurt.
Literally.
Slightly less good.
We're not, the Mets, I think it's actually hilarious how Andy Martino is Andy Martino, right? But the Mets have their own built-in Andy Martino, and it's called the injury bug. Anytime you think something's going to go right, there's going to be someone to throw cold water on it in 2 seconds. In this case, sadly, it's Alvarez going down with injury.
But I do just want to say before we go, thank you again to you guys for having me and doing this, and thank you to Duffy's for facilitating such a great night.
Oh, of course. I'm very happy to have you, Mike. Thank you so much. He's been our chauffeur throughout the trip, too. We really appreciate it. It's saving us a lot of money not having to get the rental, so thank you so much for that, Mike.
Big save.
Big save. What about you, Jim?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having us along. I appreciate Duffy's letting us come here, set up, and do this. This is a lot of fun. I'm having a good time with you guys. This is, what are we, 3? We're gonna do 4, 5, 6.
Right.
This is
20 years later.
we're gonna get old doing this. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. Asia Robertson, who I know very well, thank you so much for becoming a Mets member in the chat. We really appreciate that. To my football fans out there, many of you guys know I am a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And yes, right before we got the show started, I lost my mind on the DK Metcalf trade news. 5 years, 150. I don't give a rat's you know what. That's an overpay. We have been needing a stud to pair with George Pickens for a hot minute now. Now we just need to figure out our quarterback situation, who's going to throw to him, and we'll be good. Gerrit Cole, I don't wish injury on anybody. He's one of the best starters in the game today, but I just will say the irony could not have been better, and the baseball gods will always come down to strike you. Remind yourself that before you go out of your way next time to wish injury or bad things on an opposing player, and you know exactly who you guys are. Guys, that'll do it for our latest Big Mets Update segment, this time a live edition from Duffy Sports Bar here in Port St. Lucie. That is Mike from Stark Radio Sports. That is Jim from Ballcap Sports. This is Tyler from WardyNYM, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.